Okay, so I'm Craig Nicholson. I'm the Deputy Director of the Latin America Cape. It's now my great pleasure and joy to introduce my very dear colleague, Lisa Futschek, who is the General Manager International from Education New Zealand. So we'll now move into our Education Exchanges panel. So let's welcome Lisa with a huge round of applause.
Thank you so much, Craig. Wow, that's a really hard act to follow. Hi, everybody. Hola, buenas tardes a todos. ¿Cómo están? ¿Bien? ¿Cansados? ¿No? ¿Aburridos? Ojalá que no. It's a really hard thing to be the shift that comes straight after afternoon tea, isn't it? So I want to bring some energy into the afternoon session, and I hope that this is going to be a really engaging session for us all. Education exchanges, we've heard numerous references to that so far today, and now you're going to hear from a really fantastic panel who are, let's say, at the coalface of making those exchanges happen, facilitating them, but also going on them. So while I introduce myself a little bit more, I'm going to ask the panellists who are with us in person today to please join me on the stage. Just a little bit more about myself, Lisa Futschek. I'm the General Manager International at Education New Zealand. We are the government agency that looks after international education. You've met one of my team members, Javiera, Visedo, who's based in Santiago de Chile, and you'll be hearing some more from her this afternoon. Just a little bit about myself. I guess my love affair with Chile and with Latin America more generally began back in the 90s when I was a young diplomat, and I had the absolute pleasure of doing my first overseas posting in Chile. And so ever since that moment, I have just been very, very passionate about not just this country, but also the region. Looks like we've got all our panellists here, so that's fabulous. Look, we've got a very short time and we've got a lot of material to get through, so I'm going to do just the briefest of introductions of each of our panellists. And if you wouldn't mind, if you could just give us a wee wave so that our audience know who you are. First of all, known to us already, Javiera Visedo is joining us online. Javi is the Director of Engagement Latin America with Education New Zealand Manapou ki te ao. Also online, we have Nikita Kent. Where are you, Nikita? Give us a wee wave. Nikita is a Prime Minister's Scholarship for Latin America recipient, and she's also a member of the Latin America New Zealand Business Council Professionals Network. Carolina Cuellar. Give us a wave, Carolina. Carolina is from the Centro de Investigación para la Transformación Socioeducativa from the Universidad Católica Silva Enríquez. And finally, Alex Hufferdine. Are you there, Alex? There he is. Alex is from Thrive Consulting. In fact, we've got a fifth person online today, also as a result of flight cancellations, Rosa Guevara. Bienvenida, Rosa. Joining me on the stand, we have, first of all, Associate Professor Chris Moy from the Department of Geology at the University of Otago. Hi, Chris. We have Jeff Wood, who's the Head of Department Health and Life Skills at Rosmini College, and also Natalie Lulia, who's the Director Māori Initiatives for the Capes, but also International Indigenous Development at the University of Waikato. Welcome. So I'm going to pass my first question through to Javiera, who we've heard from earlier. Javiera is online. Javi, in the earlier Government Initiatives panel, you spoke more generally about some of the contributions that education makes to our bilateral relationship from an education perspective in Latin America. One of the things I'd really like you to introduce to the audience now are some of those specific initiatives that we run. And one of those is the Penguins Without Borders program, Pingüinos Sin Fronteras, and also the reciprocal program, Flying Kiwis, that saw school students in New Zealand and Chile travelling between those two countries. Can you tell us a little bit more about those programs, Javi?
Yes, well, hola again, nice to be back in the panel. And yes, Penguins Without Borders, it was a very iconic program. It was an initiative driven by the Minister of Economy in Chile and managed by Corfo, which is the Economic Development Agency. And the program started in 2013. And the aim of the Chilean government at that time, and especially from the Ministry of Economy, was to provide an experience for high school students from public and semi-public schools throughout Chile to so they can have an immersion experience in a developed country. And the partner of choice, with no doubt at that time, for the Minister of Economy, Pablo Longueira, was New Zealand. You know, they wanted to do that program with New Zealand. The program ran from 2013 till 2016, and they sent around 300 students to New Zealand schools for 2 terms. The students were from different parts of Chile. Most of them never traveled, never been even into Santiago. And that definitely was one of the first programs that Chilean government established, but not just for master and PhD students. Usually the mobility was around that university level. In this case, was the first program, you know, impacting the future of Chile. And next year, we're going to be celebrating 10 years of the first students. So it will be interesting for us. And this is a work that we're doing at the moment here in Chile, identifying those students, because now those students are in the mid-20s. And so it will be really interesting to see the impact of what New Zealand and the seal that now they're having in their hearts, and what the impacts of that program was. Flying Key was a program that it was created as a reciprocity and included an experience for a few Kiwi students, again from high schools, to spend a month in Chile. And in that program, we work with AFS so they can manage the program. And it was one of the first experiences, again, in terms of reciprocity. Those students were spending time here in public schools for a month and improving their English. And once again, apologies for the accent, but they spend it and they bring in that close culture here, especially again impacting students that wouldn't have the possibility otherwise to do that program as well. And then also bring, you know, diversity into our high schools. It probably was one of the early stages of global citizenship that now it's so kind of popular, and even part of our international education strategy. So definitely there was a lot of learnings. From then they were involved in some other programs, even at the government level in Chile, with, you know, other programs. We want, and one of the discussions on the recent visit of Minister Hipkins here, and we want to have a Penguins 2.0 probably, and that's part of the discussions that we're having, what implements and what tools we do have, but definitely we want to see that program.
Okay, the joys of technology. Javi, if you can hear us, you're frozen. But I'm going to move straight to Rosa, or maybe I'm not because she's not online either. In that case, maybe if I can move quite briefly to Chris. A question for you about one of your exchange programs. You were the creator of a particularly significant one on behalf of the Cape called The Winds of Change. Can you share with us some of the details of that, the reason that it was created, and some of the impact that that's having?
Kia ora koutou. Buenos tardes, everyone. Really nice to be here. Thank you very much for including me in this afternoon's discussion. I think that the main motivation, in a nutshell, to borrow a metaphor that was brought up earlier today, was to really facilitate building blocks between Chile and New Zealand in establishing the Winds of Change program, and really working hard to establish a collaborative network that joins leaders, young leaders, that have a lot of passion around climate change and our future, in making significant change happen in both countries, making sure that they have a network that they can rely upon in the coming years. And I guess the personal motivation for me for this program was way back 18 years ago in 2004, while I was a grad student. I had a Fulbright scholarship to Chile. And like many of us, we arrived to Santiago, or we arrived to Auckland at 6 a.m. You're bleary-eyed after this night flight. And, you know, I had, you know, colleagues there that I met, you know, previously to welcome me. And over that year, I was able to really expand my network and really, you know, get a lot of benefit from this year-long stay in Chile, working with Chileans and working with a handful of different scientists. And, you know, time goes by and you know, 18 years later, you know, a lot of the grad student colleagues I had while in Chile are now, you know, they're ministers or they're professors or they're leading science in some way. And so, you know, with this creation of the network, it's really all about like these young leaders making sure that as they go through their careers that they have this, you know, this network to fall back on. You know, I think in a very kind of limited term vision for this program, I'm hoping it facilitates a few airport pickups and places to stay, you know, down the line. But in 15 years, when these participants have to make some very, very difficult decisions on the face of and how we kind of move forward in both Chile and New Zealand, both these small countries in the Pacific. I really like the noisy neighbors, but you know how they, you know, how to make decisions about things like infrastructure or agriculture or aquaculture, you know, that they have colleagues in New Zealand or in Chile that they can work together with to identify solutions. So that's essentially the main motivation. And you know, it's hard developing an exchange program in 2020. I remember being in a very, very crowded meeting room in San Francisco for an Earth Sciences meeting, and getting the news that that Craig and Matthew supported the program or funded the program, and thinking like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to do all these exchanges, and we're going to be able to get, you know, Kiwis to Chile and vice versa, and that obviously didn't quite pan out that way. But you know, we have been able to do a lot with essentially workshops that have been held on Zoom. We've been able to make sure that our Kiwis also get to know, at least you know, in close proximity to a number of Chiwis or Chileans that have been based in New Zealand over these last few years, and so that's kind of it about the program in a nutshell. You know, we're trying to educate these young leaders about climate change and sustainable business and policy directives. We're trying to give them the tools through science communication to present collaborative research results to the world, and certainly to New Zealand and Chile. And you know, we're trying to also offer opportunities where we can kind of provide this shared experience where, you know, where we can really develop you know, friendships that are long-lasting and collaborations that are long-lasting. So those are some of the goals of the program, and I just have to thank certainly Matthew and Angela and Craig for supporting us through the years.
Thanks, Chris. I mean, despite the challenges of establishing that program during COVID times, what have been some of the highlights so far?
I think you know, the highlights for me come down to a few different things. It's always our annual project presentations that occur in November, December time. It's seeing, you know, how, you know, even we have this big ocean that separates us. These collaborative projects between Chileans and New Zealanders really put together some amazing outcomes, and to see them on display to a wide audience is really, really fantastic. The times that we have been able to get people together, I'm just amazed at like how quickly friendships form and how easily this group can kind of work together. And so those are some of the highlights for me, and hope to see more down the line. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Jeff, turning to you now, you've been a leader of internationalisation programs at the school level for many years, and recently you created an offshoot of Winds for Change called The Ocean That Connects Us, and I think there's an acronym that goes with that I can't pronounce. But could you tell us a bit about that program and what's been the response to this initiative in New Zealand, Chile, but also the United States?
Well, Chris, I don't know if the Ethics Committee would allow the fact that we've knocked off your program. My task in life has been to identify and nurture young people who will become our future leaders, decision makers that are emphatic and care about particularly two big issues, that is human connections and climate. And so I've been very fortunate to have had the support of Craig and Matthew, and some other people in this room, Claudio, who's jumped in and run a session for us. And of course, Craig knows and Matthew knows I'll be hunting as the day goes on for other people to come and work with 35 young people. Half of them are from Rosemary College in Auckland, and the other half are in Punta Arenas. And we're split into 3 groups, and we're examining some of the big issues. We have some support from colleagues I have made through connections over the years. They're also, as academics, concerned about the issue of climate change, and they're working with us to bring to young people the opportunity to collaborate, share culture, and on the 21st we have a competition. The New Zealand students are teaching te reo, and the Punta Arenas students are teaching us, I have learnt this, it's Patagonian, Mapuche, and Spanish, because I've told there's a difference. So we've been most fortunate to have, in the last 6 months, been able to come in and replicate the program as best we can. We hope that we'll have some presentations to put up and share in the future. It's a commitment that my students have made through the years in college. So we're going to have some students with us for 7 years. And so, but at the end of 7 years, I hope we're going to have some real good leaders, decision makers, potential academics to send your way. Thank you. That's our present back, okay?
Thanks, Jeff. Loving the idea of the upcoming initiative with the te reo and Spanish. Is that's going via Zoom or virtually, and will there be an opportunity for that to happen as a sort of in-person exchange at some point? Is that what's the ambition for the program?
We're trying to meet weekly, the students up at Takapuna at Rosemary, as with the students in Punta Arenas, and we are using Zoom, and we'll just continue to use the technology as best we can to bring the students closer together. They are learning a lot about both countries and themselves. They're learning about their own country as they wish to share it.
Fabulous, thank you. Speaking of technology, I do believe we've got our online people back again, and I'm going to move back to Rosa. And if we could just go back around the Penguins Without Borders program, because I understand that your school, Northcote College, has received these students in the past, and I'm really interested if you could share with us what the impact of this program has been on for your school and also your broader school community for having these students learn alongside the Kiwi students. Rosa.
Yes, hi, hello. Sorry, I can't be there today. My flight got cancelled at the last minute, unfortunately. But yes, I am happy to share what I know about the program and what I saw as well. For Northcote, it was a real privilege to host the Penguins back in 2013, 2014, and maybe 2015 as well. It was a really, really good experience for both the school and the students and the Chilean students and the Northcote students. It was kind of like a mutual benefit for both groups. These students, Penguins Without Borders, were very well selected and were very high achieving students. So for Northcote, it was also like a challenge to see if we were ready to provide and meet expectations. So we were very happy when we saw that the students were integrating so well. Their English level was so outstanding that their integration to the school life was really easy. And yes, we just enjoy seeing how they connected and how they got involved in the school life. So that was really good. Culturally speaking, repeating a little bit what Javiera said before, that for New Zealand, some New Zealand students traveling overseas is not a possibility either. So having a group of like ambassadors, we call them the ambassadors, it was like bringing the culture and the lifestyle and making all those connections was really good. Because it was like having a little Latin America, a taste of Latin America in the classroom. So it was really good for the North Coast students, having the Chilean students. And I am getting dark here, and then I apologize for the noise, but I'm right next to a site construction. So it's a little bit, yes, and also something that I could add is that the students, the penguins, were a real inspiration when they were here, because around that time, Northcote College selected 2 students to go to Chile in the reciprocal program, Flying Kiwis. So that was an inspiration for the students to travel, and it was an inspiration for those that were studying Spanish to learn more Spanish. So it was a really, really good, amazing experience. Yes.
Thanks so much, Rosa. Coming
okay.
back briefly to you, Javiera, at the tertiary level, there's also a range of important mobility programs with Chile. And we've heard several references already today to the Prime Minister's scholarships for Latin America. Just wondering if you can tell us more about the aims and the impact of that program. Over to you, Javi.
Yes, now I'm back in line. Hope my internet doesn't collapse this time. Yeah, I think this has been one of the most exciting initiatives that we've been running since 2015. Because talking about the reciprocity, the PMSLA definitely has been a program that has allowed, again, to connect and to keep us closer. I think it opened a huge opportunity for all Kiwi students to learn, once again, about the region, language, culture in general. So I think it's opened definitely a new opportunity for those students that might have a connection with Chile but didn't know actually where to study or where to go. Some of them, and we've seen great results about all the programs also established by Cape Latam and Tech Hononga, Akiwa, and now allowing again that experience. Some of those now are working at MFAT, MPI, working in the business sector as well. So again, it's definitely for us, and it's incredible when you provide those opportunities to Kiwi students to really embrace it. And knowing that they have the government support behind that makes this transit very, very easier. We are looking forward to welcome the new groups, as what the minister mentioned, that we're having a group of Māori students next month. We've been having groups in the past in the economics area, in the law area, in the ag sector. Really excited about Te Pukenga group also coming really soon. We'll have a group from in architecture as well. So as you can see, also completely different areas that are not necessarily super traditional. We are working really hard in increasing now the participation of Māori in Pacifica. I think that's one of the next goals for us, and where we're working really hard at the moment. And definitely, the alumni that we do have right now, it helps definitely once again to strengthen those connections and allowing those bring us as closer as ever.
Great, thanks so much, Javi. And look, a discussion on the Prime Minister's scholarships for Latin America wouldn't be complete without actually speaking to a student of that program. So coming to you next, Nikita, you are a master's student in Japan, as well as a member of the Young Professionals Network of the Latin America New Zealand Business Council. But before that, you were a Prime Minister's Scholarship for Latin America recipient. Can you tell us a little bit about the focus of your scholarship and how it's influenced your career development? Nikita.
Hi everyone, and thanks for having me here. I was awarded the scholarship in 2018. I was with the Victoria University of Wellington doing my degree, and I spent the last 6 months of my degree in Chile and Santiago. I wanted to stop, the main purpose of me going to South America is I wanted to stop guessing about what South America was like, and I just wanted to kind of discover the truth on my own. And yeah, so I ended up spending 6 months in Santiago as an exchange student. and a further 4 months doing an internship at the UN under the granddaughter of President Allende. So that was an amazing experience. The greatest thing about living in Chile as a student was the ability to combine something practical like my degree with an immersion in a different culture and language. While it was really difficult to understand Chilean Spanish at first, I got used to it within a few months. And I designed my undergraduate thesis so that I spent a lot of time interviewing immigrants to Chile and the Chilean reactions to the new immigration diaspora within Latin America caused by the Venezuelan crisis. It meant that I would travel all over Santiago, from San Fernando to where the Haitian people were living, to Santiago Central, where the Venezuelan women were working in nail salons and in beauty parlors, to Las Condes, where like the wealthier Chileans were working on immigration policies to solve the situation. While I didn't realize it at the time, when I look back now, those 6 months consisted of the most condensed learning experience I've ever had in my life. Speaking a new language, talking to Venezuelans, Peruvians, Haitians, and Chileans in Santiago on a daily basis, undertaking my degree, making new friends, and being immersed in a new culture, learning different foods, customs, and routines. I cannot simply imagine an experience more effective than the one that PMSLA helped to fund. The scholarship was also a catalyst to many other events. 4 years ago, I asked someone much older and wiser than me what the secret is to being successful, which is super cliche. They responded to me that success is like lightning. The more poles you have in the sky, the more likely you are to get struck by lightning. In other words, the harder you work, the more likely you are to get hit with luck. I think the scholarship was one of the poles I had in the sky. It enabled me to talk with officials that may have otherwise not spoken to me as a fresh-faced 19-year-old with no qualifications. I now have valuable connections with several people working in development and government within Latin America. I speak Spanish somewhat fluently and have moved on towards learning my third language. My life's work will forever be dedicated to protecting the biodiversity of the Andes and Amazonia. While I have not reached my personal definition of success yet, it is only a matter of time, and I'm so grateful for the PMSLA to give my career the head start it needed. My exchange in Chile has forever changed my trajectory and chances of being struck by lightning, which in turn is only beneficial for the countries I will end up representing for 60 years to come.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nikita. That was an incredibly inspiring story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm going to turn next to Alex, just in case we have, while we have him online still, and I presume he's still there. Interactions between Kiwis and Chileans are not confined to the school and university sectors. And Alex, when you were at Otago Polytechnic, you ran a program that saw close to 200 students experience study, internships, and English language in a small central Otago community. What fruits did the program have for the Chilean students who came here? Yeah, you'll see what I did there. And how did the host community benefit from their time in Cromwell, I believe it was? Alex, over to you.
Thanks very much, Lisa, and thanks very much, everybody, for having me from Central Otago on a very cold day today, hopefully getting better and no frost. Look, we were lurking around in South America for a few years, and we had some success in attracting students from Latin America to New Zealand, one or two here and there. And eventually Javiera collared me and said, Alex, look, I think I've got an opportunity for you. I think there's an opportunity to bring some students to New Zealand for an experience in our rural sector. And so we perked our ears up and worked with Javiera quite quickly, actually, and developed the program that semi-rural students could come to New Zealand in the horticulture industry. And to us, it was a perfect mix. You know, you've got an industry demand on our side in New Zealand that is growing quickly, have real labour issues and want people to come and learn the craft. And on the other side, students, some from less privileged backgrounds, not able to have an international experience. And it, for me, just felt like the perfect arrangement. We've got demand on both sides. I was in the middle, and Javiera gratefully gave me some time, and we put a program together, and look, it seemed to work really well. And I think it's got huge potential throughout New Zealand to grow, maybe in a slightly different way now that COVID's been through. But yeah, we brought these students to what is a pretty small community in central Otago, a community that's reasonably softened up to international people through our horticulture and wine industry. And so it was a reasonably safe bet to bring them to this area. We used a whole bunch of homestays to give these young people, 18, 20-year-olds, a bit of an experience in New Zealand, and with the hope that they'd go back home. Maybe they would continue on into a technical, maybe following through as an agriculture engineer. And largely that's what's happened. It's been fantastic to track these students and actually see where they've gone, and they've been very, very successful. But in the small community, we placed these Latin students, a small group to start with, and the feedback from the community was really good. And that grew and grew and grew, and to the point where the community was expecting us to bring these students every year and add richness. But it also brought, you know, our campus was a small campus, around 200, 250 students, and suddenly you plonk 30 odd Latinos into that mix of quite Kiwis and a few internationals, and the campus just went crazy. It was fantastic. So yeah, it's been a great experience. The community's really embraced them. In fact, I'm reasonably connected in the community, and I constantly get feedback from people. When are the students coming back? What's the opportunity? We love the Latinos to come back here. And I do think there's a real opportunity. I think the primary sector trainee visa class gives a perfect opportunity for exchanges, for connection, and for the transfer of skills and information back both ways. I'd really like to see that. But just before we got closed down with COVID, we were working with Mexico in the Jalisco province, and it basically signed up an agreement to bring a lot of students for the same arrangement. There's a huge demand to come here. What I did see, Lisa, from the students that were here, after 5 months, probably the biggest gift that they got was to take home English and that international experience. I'm sure we added some real technical skills for those learners, but they were well drilled, well educated young people. But I think the real gift was actually sending back English and the potential to kind of broaden their mind and go back home. And for me, I just think there's untapped opportunity in New Zealand for that sort of exchange, and hopefully both ways as well. So yeah, it has been a really positive experience in a small community.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Alex. Natalie, I'm coming to you next. As Director of Māori Initiatives for the Capes, you've taken Māori students and educational leaders to Chile through several of the Cape programs. Can you share some of the highlights of the experiences that you've had?
Pai, tēnā koe Lisa, tēnā tātou katoa, kua huhui mai nei tēnei ahiahi, ai, Mari, ola, yeah, me ngā rangitirama. Yeah, thanks for the question, and really awesome to be here. I think, yeah, there's been a ton of initiatives that we've been able to deliver through the Capes for our Māori students, Māori educators, and our Māori businesses. And one of the things for us is, you know we exist in a much larger ecosystem, in a much larger network of people, and so for Capes in particular, where is our contribution to that bigger ecosystem. And I know there are some of the people who exist in that ecosystem here. So mihi ana kia korua, Vicky, Rawa ko Rachel, who also do a lot of mahi in our Indigenous engagement space. So just to speak a little bit about, I guess, our approach to Indigenous engagement, and particularly, forwarding and expanding our mahi for Māori. We have an ecosystem called Ngā Hononga Kiwa, and hononga basically is our connection or our relationship, and Kiwa is a reference to one of our legendary voyages, and for us that is an acknowledgement to a legacy and a connection that already existed, but what is our, I guess, manifestation of that today. And there are, I guess, three kind of key areas that we look at, in particular around hononga. So that's hononga whakapapa, hononga taututu, and hononga maurua. And so those three, in a very quick summary, so hononga whakapapa for us is this notion of knowing who you are, and being able to, I guess, teaching our kids and our students, and also throughout the schooling sector and with our businesses, is having that deep sense of identity about who you are, and also, where your place is, in the world. And so, we touch on things like, what does it mean to be Māori? What does it mean to be Indigenous? And also, what does that look like in the context of being a global citizen? So there's that one there, which is one, we've actually got a new program called Te Rangi Tāmiro. It's with our Year 10 students, and it is really exploring those notions of identity, and then connecting with our Indigenous whānau, actually across all three Cape regions. We do that program. Hononga taututu, so it has been spoken about already, so it's this notion of reciprocity, and what is, what does that look like, I guess, for our businesses, for our educators, for our students, and like you mentioned, we're building these future leaders, so what does the notion of reciprocity look like in that sense? And also as well, what is this reciprocity as tangata whenua, and our responsibility to our environment, so to the taiao. So what does that reciprocity look like? And then for hononga maurua, maurua essentially for us is this notion of enduring relationships. And so what does it look like to build meaningful and enduring relationships? Again, that are not new. They are ones that, have existed long before I was here, definitely, but will exist long after I have gone. But again, what is our contribution to that space? So we've had, I've had the privilege of sharing this mahi on behalf of a very dedicated team across our Capes whānau who are committed to our Māori and Indigenous development space, and we've seen being able to take students overseas prior to COVID to engage face-to-face, kanohi ki te kanohi, and, traversing language barriers, but in after five or 6 days time, fully embracing each other, so some tears were shed, but, knowing that that connection from people to people, culture to culture, ngākau to ngākau, is something we've been able to facilitate, as well as, I guess the other, there's a whole bunch of highlights. I probably could go on and on about it. But I think for us is our intention is to provide these spaces, particularly for our rangatahi, for our young leaders that are coming through, where they're able to be safe in who they are, and actually explore what does it mean, where is their place in the world, and what is their contribution, purpose and legacy inside of that, and that's our job to facilitate that.
Wonderful, thank you so much for that. We've got a few minutes left, and I'm quite determined because everybody has been so attentive and so engaged and has listened so quietly. We actually do want to hear from you. I would love you to ask a question of one of our panellists individually or as a group. Matthew is mouthing a question or a statement to me. Carolina. Yes, indeed. Thank you so very much. Carolina, my apologies. with our interruption before with the internet, I have neglected to ask you your question. And your question is that when the Minister of Education visited Chile in June, you gave him an advance copy of your book, Bridges Across the South Pacific. And indeed, the Minister himself referred to that when he addressed, there we are, we've got the book being shown to us, addressed us earlier today. Could you tell us a little bit about how the book came about and what its results have been so far? Over to you, Carolina.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank the invitation to participate in this event. I have here with me the book. Maybe you can see it from there. And Puentes sobre el Pacífico Sur. This is the name of the book. And the book is part of a professional development project for Chilean English teachers funded by the Chilean Ministry of Education and the government of the Araucanía region. This project was carried out in partnership with the University of Waikato and Universidad Católica Silva Enríquez, where I work as a researcher and professor. And by the way, I'm a very proud Waikato alumni, I have to say it. And for the past 3 years, the University of Waikato hosted a group of 61 public school teachers from Araucanía. The Waikato University delivered a comprehensive and integrated program of professional learning, which recognized the importance of supporting the inter-teachers to lead pedagogical change within their schools. The involvement of my university and myself as an additional professional learning partner has had an emphasis on systematizing and consolidating the experience of teachers when they return to their schools, as well as ensuring that the impact of the 4-week experience in Aotearoa could be sustained and enhanced in their classrooms. I have to say that while the focus of this book is on teachers and the impact of this experience on their teaching, I must say that all the parties that were involved in the project learned so much from this opportunity to work and build relationships across countries and cultures. I believe that the reciprocal, collaborative, and intercultural nature of this professional learning partnership has been the key to its success. In terms of the impact of the project on Chilean teachers, I could highlight many aspects. For example, Chilean teachers noted the value that the Kiwi people place on the Māori culture, but also on cultural diversity. These teachers live and work in a similar cultural diverse context, Araucanía, which made them appreciate their experience during their time in New Zealand. So despite the difference in our two countries, teachers celebrated the similarities and connections. Moreover, teachers highlighted the value they placed on being able to immerse themselves in a school life, observing, learning and teaching and engaging with the students and teachers. They found this time in New Zealand school transformational, having witnesses relational and culturally responsive pedagogies in action. In exploring learning and as an approach to thinking about teaching, Chilean teachers recognize the need to place greater emphasis on building positive, caring relationships with their students, creating warm, safe, and engaging environment for learners, and taking an interest in who their students are, where they come from, and what they bring to the schools. Besides, teachers value the time and space they have to reflect critically on their impact on their teaching and students' learning. They also talk about the importance of working in collaboration with colleagues, sharing and challenging thinking and practice. There was also a sense of renewed energy, I can say, and motivation to persist with change to put their innovation plans into action. Thanks to this experience, teachers felt validated in their efforts and believed that they could make a difference. They also seemed more confident about their ability to lead meaningful learning within their schools. Finally, their increased confidence and proficiency in English language, both speaking and listening, was acknowledged by teachers themselves, school leaders, and the Ministry of Education personnel. I have to say that they cope very well with this strange and unfamiliar Kiwi accent and their rapid speech as well. And as one intern commented, now I really feel that I can survive in any English-speaking country. I could say a lot of learnings and many other aspects that were developed during the experience. But I think that my time is over. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carolina. So back to where we were, I am really, really keen to encourage questions from the floor. And if you are in the middle of a row, feel free to just call the question out. I'll repeat it so everyone can hear it. But if you can, it would be better if you could make your way to the mic. Do we have a question for one of our panellists, or indeed for a general question for the panel as a whole? Thank you very much. Please come forward if you can, that'd be great. And if you could just give us your name, where you're from, and a question. Thank you.
Hi, kia ora tātou. Ko wai au, ko Waikato te iwi, ko Waikato te awa, he piko he taniwha, he piko he taniwha. Ko Rachel Petero tōku ingoa. Kei te mihi ki a koutou, mō tō whakaro, mō tō kōrero i tēnei ahi. So my question is around, and it is for our tuahine, Natalie, is around bringing more Māori Pacific into the tech industry, and especially for our wahine Māori and Pacifica, because we're really lacking in I'm talking about in tech in terms of education, the sciences, but also in business. So that's my pātai. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Ai, kia ora mo tō pātai. Yes, interestingly, that has been one of the the areas that we have been looking at, and we haven't yet actually done it in Latin America, but we have previously taken 4 Māori businesses, and there must have been around 16 Māori tauira over to Vietnam specifically to look at tech. So that is, definitely an area, and for our wahine as well, is looking at spaces, I guess that allows them to explore, some spaces that have not historically been filled with our wahine Māori, and I know that tech is one, and actually too, even across our environmental sector, so going into science, and the connected to the tech industry as well. So it is definitely something we are working on, but also too, like I said earlier, actually looking at who are the players in this ecosystem, and where might we, it may just be a part that actually there's some real experts out there, which we know there are, and how might we facilitate a connection for that to happen. We can't be everywhere all at once, but how might we make those really meaningful connections to be able to foster and enable those relationships to happen? Because I certainly don't know everything.
Thanks so much.
Kia ora.
We've got time for one more question. I'm sure there's a burning question out there somewhere. I'm going to wait a very uncomfortable silence until someone comes forward. Here we have one. Thank you very much.
Kia ora tātou, Matt Plummer from the Research Office at Victoria University, Te Here Ngawaka, and in the goal of avoiding uncomfortable silences. I just wanted to know, for those people that have done a remarkable job, by the sounds of things, negotiating these kinds of cultural exchange programs and workshops in the age of COVID, have there been any unforeseen benefits due to this kind of interruption? Have there been any affordances from being able to connect digitally? And, in addition to the things that you've been able to just cope with, have there been anything that, might continue to foster these kinds of exchanges and relationships, maybe complementing and face-to-face exchanges in the future?
Quick response. I believe our students have become more comfortable being online and communicating face-to-face, well, I shouldn't say face-to-face, but digitally. Being at home, making connections with their teachers, and for us to extend that, we communicate weekly up to Finland, across to South Africa, as well as around the Pacific, and our students are so comfortable now. prior to COVID. It took a few weeks to get them up to speed.
I'm going to also give the last word on that question to Javiera. If you're still online, Javiera, I wonder if you could give an example around the Kōrero series that Education New Zealand developed to enable us to keep those connections going whilst we couldn't have mobility between our two countries. Javi.
Yes, I'm still here. Hopefully, yeah, fingers crossed. Yes, definitely the pandemic, I think, opened a new door for the connectivity of people and allow more people to connect. And while we were stuck at home, especially in Chile, they were stuck at home for a long, long time. We, the Latin America team with Ana Acevedo, that is also in the audience there, and Bruna, we created the Kōrero sessions. This was a way of creating a space, a virtual space with New Zealand academics. Some of the ones that are in the room participated in some of the sessions, and speakers from Latin America, and we were running monthly Kōrero sessions of 1 hour, not necessarily to, just to have an exchange of ideas, not necessarily having the final word, but exchanging ideas, different thoughts. In every Kōrero that we had also, again, more similarities were showcased. We had Kōreros in the creative industry, in agri-tech, in Indigenous engagement as well, in sustainability, different topics. And that was, again, a great experience. We also ran the GCC program, Global Competence Certificate, with students in New Zealand and students in Chile as well. And it was great opportunities. And again, I would say a great way to make this available for everyone. And I think some of them will remain. And what Winds of Change are doing, it's amazing. Program, the Talk To Us program as well, and some other initiatives will remain. And there will be definitely a captive audience. People are saying it's much more natural in that, with the challenges that connectivity sometimes have. But definitely it's an audience. And again, it allowed people to connect much more closer in previous or face-to-face engagement that now we're starting to have.
Thank you so much, Javi. I'm going to bring the session to a close now, but could you please bring your hands together for our fabulous panel once again. And as our panellists leave the stage, I'm going to invite Craig Nicholson to come and introduce the next session. Thank you.